Welcome, viewers, to another Readers Theatre Players production. We're a branch of the Eugene Community's Playhouse, the Very Little Theater, or VLT, serving Oregon playgoers since 1929. In pre-pandemic times, the Readers Theatre Players presented monthly at 8 to 10 senior residences in Eugene. Now, with COVID-19 keeping visitors at bay, we again dedicate this performance to our loyal senior audiences and offer it to all who would hear us perform. Our cast includes Jane Irola, Mary Keating, Robert Rubinstein, and Marty Cohen, who also directed this show. I'm Claude Offenbacher, your MC. Thanks to our production and Zoom master Tim Rogers, Readers Theatre Players leader Judy Sawyer, and VLT Virtual Theatre Coordinator Russell Dyball. And now, on with the show. Love Stories Reunion was written by Dan DeMario. He's a Portland-based author, and he illustrates how complicated divorce can be. It's performed by Mary Keating.
Like everyone who gets married, I thought it would last forever. Then, just like that, everything you loved is gone. I hadn't seen him for a month, and it's funny how you worry that a month away from each other will erase all the years together. But still, I was told to be at the park at 10 o'clock, and he would be there. I was excited, almost giddy. Would he be as excited to see me again? I checked my watch every 5 minutes, left the house early, and had to walk around the block 3 times to ensure I wouldn't seem too anxious by arriving too early. Nervously, I stood by the entrance, looking across the field. My eyes were drawn to him immediately. He was with his usual Saturday group, running across the field, always chasing some ball. He looked happy. As I stared at him, I was lost in time, thinking back through the events of our lives together. How will it change now? My trance was broken when he suddenly stopped. Catching his breath, he turned his head as if feeling my presence. My heart stopped. This was it. The moment that defines my life moving forward from this second. Was he smiling? He was so far away, but is that a smile or what? He broke into a sprint coming straight towards me. Everything seemed to be happening in slow motion, like a tampon commercial. His muscles flexing, his black hair flowing, and my knees so weak I thought I might faint. He barely slowed as he threw himself into me, tumbling us both to the ground. My fears abated, tension dissolved. We rolled around in the grass like a couple of children. When I felt he had his fill of face licking, I slipped the leash onto his collar and we headed home to start our month together.
And now, the counseling session written by our own Readers Theatre Players veteran, Jan Morrisand. When a reluctant husband is dragged to a couple's counseling session, it's usually a recipe for failure. But if the right ingredients are present, not always. It's performed by Jane Irola, Mary Keating, and Robert Rubinstein.
Well, I'm here. Here I am. Are you satisfied?
That's just great. What a great attitude.
What? You wanted me to come for counseling. Here I am. What's the problem?
Huh. You don't really want to be here. That's the problem.
Wait a darn minute. I didn't want to come, but I came to please you. Don't I get any credit for that?
You can't benefit from counseling unless you want it.
But I don't want it.
Exactly. Exactly. I wonder what Dr. Gruber will be like.
He's probably a little shrimp with a pot belly and horn-rimmed glasses.
Well, you've already made up your mind not to like him, haven't you?
Only if he's a little shrimp with a pot belly and horn-rimmed glasses.
You know, you wouldn't like him if he looked like Ronald Reagan.
I might like him, but I wouldn't trust him.
Well, I thought you thought Reagan was great.
I do. But he wasn't a shrink.
See? You've made up your mind. You're just going to sit there like you always do and go through the motions and nothing will change, nothing at all.
Now who's made up their mind about what will happen here?
Well, I haven't made up my mind. I just know you. I know what you're like. You say things and get me all confused. But underneath, you're just the same. You won't confuse me this time, Harry. I know.
But your mind isn't made up.
Of course not. I always keep an open mind about everything.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Gruber. Sorry to keep you waiting. A phone call that I just couldn't seem to finish. You must be the Martins.
You're Dr. Gruber?
Well, I'm not Ronald Reagan. I overheard you talking as I came in.
Yeah. Well, we were just expecting a man. Yes, I'm Wilma, and this is my husband, Harry, over here.
Yes, well, how can I be of help to you folks?
Doctor, I'm so glad you asked that question. You see, it's Harry. He never talks, just sits there, you know, like he's doing right now. You see that? And it's like living with a rock or a tree stump or something, except that a tree stump isn't crazy about the Seattle Seahawks. And tree stumps don't drop greasy French fries on the floor or leave their clothes in a heap on the floor too. Or
just a minute, Wilma.
What?
We mustn't let this turn into a tattling session.
Okay.
If we're going to get anywhere, we need to be constructive.
Okay.
You said that you would like Harold to talk to you more. Now, let's see. Harry, do you understand what your wife is asking of you?
Yes, of course he does. He probably won't say so, but of course he knows. I've told him often enough.
Well, let's let Harry answer for himself, shall we?
Yes.
Harry, do you understand what your wife wants?
Not really.
Didn't I tell you? I told you. He won't admit it, but he knows.
Okay, let's slow down a bit, just so I can get an idea of how things go with you.
Yeah.
I'd like you to pretend for just a minute that you're back in your own home. You're sitting at the dinner table. Wilma has just cooked a nice dinner for the two of you. Do you know what she means by a nasty look in your eye? Are you feeling something she might interpret as nasty?
Huh? What's that supposed to mean? Harry, what's that supposed to mean? You don't like my cooking? He likes my cooking. Or did you want Dr. Gruber to think I never cooked dinner for you?
When is the last time you cooked dinner?
Oh gosh, last night I cooked dinner just last night, and it was a very lovely dinner.
I'm sure the Swanson people thought so when they decided to put those little things on the aluminum tray. You call it cooking to slide a TV dinner in the oven?
Oh, well, what is it? Mowing the grass? And speaking of that, just last week you said, Dr. Gruber, just look at him. Look at that nasty look in his beady little eyes. This is what I have to put up with every single night.
I'm not so sure about that. Harry, would you be willing to tell Wilma one thing that you'd enjoy talking with her about?
Football.
Oh. Oh. Okay. Well, that would be a start.
Well, you see?
Oh.
You see, he just won't talk at all.
Oh, here we go. I know we'll get around to this. What are your feelings, Harry? Why don't you talk about your feelings?
You'd rather not discuss your feelings.
Brilliant, Doctor.
Well, again, you see, I told you. He just won't talk at all.
Well, what does he like to talk about?
I told you, football.
Well, that would be a start.
Oh, so I'm supposed to sit around and talk about football? Stupid game. All those men pushing each other around and trying to break each other's legs to prove what big men they are. Besides, Harry, I don't think you really like football at all. It's just an excuse to sit around all day and drink beer.
Wilma.
But really, Doctor, this woman wouldn't know a forward pass from a touchdown.
Oh, you know what? And I wouldn't want to either. Beer and football are vulgar and gross, and everybody knows it. I'm surprised at you, Dr. Gruber. I thought you might be a bit more understanding. But then perhaps you find it difficult to treat a couple with an assertive woman.
I won't respond to that.
No, of course not.
More importantly, Wilma, if you want to get your husband to talk to you, you have to meet him where he is. Talking about football could be a bridge to talking about other things.
That's what it seems like right now. I came here hoping you would help me find a way to make Harry change, to be a better, more thoughtful, more loving husband. And instead, you tell me to talk football?
Wilma, what do you mean by that, Wilma? That another woman can't understand you?
Well, there really isn't any hope, is there? I mean, you don't listen to me any more than Harry does. I'll bet the minute you walked in the room, you decided there's a woman who won't talk football with her husband. And that also makes me a bad wife and Harry a good husband. Forget about his bad habits. Forget that he never talks. Forget that he doesn't love me anymore.
Wilma, you're overreacting. I didn't say anything.
Overreacting. When your husband doesn't love you anymore, your counselor sides with him, I suppose you don't think that should be upsetting.
Wait, Wilma, I'm not siding with any.
Oh, you've been on his side from the minute you walked in here. You're all alike. You think assertive women are strange. You don't care about how we feel.
Wilma, will you get a hold of yourself? Carrying on like this isn't going to help things.
Doc, I don't like your tone of voice.
What?
That's my wife you're talking to. You're supposed to be a shrink. You're not supposed to boss her around or talk down to her. You're supposed to listen to her.
Harry, what did I say?
Don't give me what did I say. You know damn well what you said and how you said it. And I'm here to tell you, you don't talk to my wife like that.
Harry?
But
Don't but me no buts. If you think you can talk down to my wife, you better think again. Honey, let's get out of here.
Oh, Harry.
Well, are you sure that's what you
We're
wanted?
sure. Come on, Toots. Let's go home. I'll buy you a beer.
I never had a beer with you before, Harry. How exciting.
Well, I don't know what I did, but I guess it worked.
In this little sketch, The Flying Man, a crowded airline flight has been canceled. A single agent rebooks a long line of inconvenienced travelers. Suddenly, an angry passenger pushes his way to the desk. He slaps his ticket on the counter and demands to be first in line. Flying Man is performed by Jane Irola and Robert Rubinstein.
I have to be on that flight, and I have to be in first class.
I'm sorry, sir. I'll be happy to help you, but I have to help those folks first. Then I'm sure we'll be able to work something out.
Do you know who I am?
Attention, all passengers. We have a passenger here at gate 14 who does not know who he is. If anyone can help him with his identity, please come to gate 14.
Screw you, lady.
I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to get in line for that too.
Farts Yoga, a one-act play by Gabriel Davis, tells how repeated public expulsion of flatulence in yoga class can lead to a newfound freedom. This freedom can be contagious, as manifested when a yoga student's nascent self-expression spreads among and around the group. Here's Jane Irola.
Wow. I farted in yoga class. It was loud, and I didn't die. My heart started pounding, but it didn't explode. I thought I would be devastated, but I wasn't. Instead, something unexpected happened. I laughed. At first, a little giggle, and then a full-blown belly laugh. In fact, I laughed so hard that I farted again, and again, and again, and again. Oh, embarrassing. No, 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 no. I could feel people staring at me, but I didn't care. I thought I would care. Feel my palms grow clammy and my chest tighten. Nope. I felt the lightness, wonder, awe. Who knew I had so much air inside me? My body had deflated, but my spirit had inflated. I waited for this self-loathing to start. But there was only stillness, silence. And in that silence, I heard a little voice. I love you. Your body is amazing. Ah, you know, I realized this is why I'd come to yoga in the first place. No, not to fart publicly, but to fart publicly and survive it. I know, it's unladylike. But in the depth of this indignity, I had found my greatest strength. Here I was looking at my fear in the face, and believe me, I had feared this moment. I had played it out in my mind, and it always ended with all the ladies around me pulling hidden rocks out of their Lululemon attire and stoning me mercilessly. But not much happened. Here I was staring fear in the face and realizing it was a bunch of hot air and I could release it. I breathed in deep, so deep. Another exclamation of my newfound freedom erupted from my behind. "Excuse me," the woman behind me said, "but could you step outside for a minute? Some of us are trying to practice yoga." Well, this should have destroyed me. This should have sent me whimpering from the room. But I felt my calm breath, heard myself say, "Excuse me, I'm practicing my fart nasanas, thank you very much." Then something amazing happened. A little noise erupted from another corner of the room. A few other people giggled, then laughed, and then more noises erupted, and it was beautiful. A symphony of fart nasanas. I was free, they were free, and thank God, I am free.
Our next story is about an equal opportunity Chinese emperor interviewing a local samurai, a Chinese warrior, and a rabbi for an opening as his new chief bodyguard. It's performed by Jane Irola and Robert Rubinstein.
Once upon a time, a powerful Chinese emperor decided he wanted a new chief bodyguard. 3 men applied: a samurai, a Chinese warrior, and a rabbi. He said to them, "Show me your skills." The samurai warrior stepped forward, and he had a box. He opened the lid, and a fly flew out. He took out his sword and went swish and sliced that fly right in half. "Amazing," said the emperor. And then he turned to the Chinese warrior and he said, "Show me your skill." The Chinese warrior took out a box, opened it out, and here came a fly, and he took out his sword and went swish, swish. That fly was cut into 4 parts. "Huh, that is astounding," said the emperor. And he turned to the rabbi and said, "How are you going to compete with that?" The rabbi took out a box, opened it up, and a fly buzzed out. The rabbi took out his sword and went swish, swish, but the fly was still buzzing around. And the emperor said, "You didn't even kill it. It's not dead." "Dead?" said the rabbi. "Dead is easy. Now a circumcision, that takes real skill."
Charlie is adapted from the play American Duets by Mark Lieb. Charlie is having a beer with Jim, a fellow worker, and tells him about Jessica, a young woman with whom he's fallen in love. Jessica has let Charlie know she can't love a man who's not engaged in the world in a meaningful way. This only motivates Charlie to seek to prove himself to her. Charlie is performed by Marty Cohen.
Hey, Jim. How are you? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Real good. Jim, I was watching Rocky on Netflix a few days ago. Have you seen it? Well, it's about a loser, a nobody, who gets a shot at the heavyweight title and a chance to redeem all the humiliations he suffered his entire life. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I identify with this guy. Me, from an upper middle class family. I see myself as Rocky Balboa. Why? Because I'm getting lost in the shuffle, just like him. You know, Jim, my parents expected me to be an attorney and a doctor, or like all the other kids I knew. And just like them, I was supposed to make an enormous amount of money. And just like them, I was supposed to stay high on steak and lobster dinners and vacations in the south of France. And I was to die a rich and happy nobody, totally detached from any issue that mattered more than the relative comforts of a Mercedes or a BMW. And you know, Jim, I was moving along fine on that path, but I took one small detour. I fell in love with Jessica. Yes. And you know, Jim, she told me some things. She said that she knows in her heart that I was going to involve myself in this world, that I was going to notice it. The politics, the history, and the suffering as well. And I made a start. I wrote that article for our newspaper about the horrendous events that we're going through right now. But that wasn't enough. So I signed up for the presidential campaign, which I knew she would approve. And now, I don't know what's next, but I've taken some steps and I'm sure others will follow. Jim, my life's gonna matter, and not just to my stockbroker. That's what she's done for me, Jim. You know, with all the challenges and all the obstacles put in my way, I won't stop loving her. She's changed me. She's still changing me. And I know, even though she's married, well, with all my hard work, I can make her love me. What's that? Another beer? Yeah, sure. 2 more beers here, barkeep.
And now Mary Oliver's poem, Fall Song. Much as when leaves fall, leaving trees bare, we're asked to remember that everything lives, shifting from one bright vision to another. Fall Song is recited by Mary Keating.
Another year gone, leaving everywhere its rich, spiced residues, vines, leaves, the uneaten fruits crumbling damply in the shadows, unmattering back from the island of this summer. This now, that now is nowhere except underfoot, moldering in that black subterranean castle of unobservable mysteries, roots and sealed seeds and the wanderings of water. This I try to remember when time's measure painfully chafes. For instance, when autumn flares out at the last, boisterous and like us longing to stay, how everything lives, shifting from one bright vision to another, forever in these momentary pastures.
Potatoes is the work of Eric Kimmel, an internationally acclaimed children's book author. Kimmel wrote many stories about Herschel, a Ukrainian from Ostropol 250 years ago. Herschel was a Luftmensch, Yiddish for a man who lives on air, with no money, no steady job. Herschel survived on his humor and good sense. Robert Rubinstein tells the story.
Rabbi Israel was Ostropol's chief and only rabbi. He was a kindly man who cared deeply for the poor. And each morning he would make his rounds of the rich families, asking for food and money for the poor. And each afternoon he would prepare a supper for the poor, and they would come to the synagogue. But the rich gave less and less, and the number of poor was endless. And so each day they had potatoes at the synagogue, and the families made up a song about it. Monday potatoes, Tuesday potatoes, Wednesday and Thursday potatoes, Friday for a special treat, potatoes do we get to eat. Saturday and Sunday, potatoes. Well, Herschel and his family found themselves at the synagogue for supper for many weeks. And after many weeks of potatoes, Herschel said, Rabbi Israel, what is the blessing for potatoes? And Rabbi Israel said, Herschel, you know the blessing. Blessed be the fruit of the earth. Yes, said Herschel. I know that blessing when the potatoes come from the ground. Well, what's the blessing when the potatoes are coming out of your ears? The rabbi got the point. And the next day, when the people came for supper, he announced to them, Mendel, the fishmonger, has donated 24 fine fish. Everybody will have fish for dinner. But when the fish was put on Herschel's plate, he smelled something and he turned to his neighbor and said, something smells, and I know it's not me. And Herschel tasted a piece of that fish and, this fish is ancient. If it was any older, it would grow a beard. And someone else tasted the fish and said, this fish must have come from King Sobieski's time. And another person said, if not before. Well, they said the rabbi would not serve us rotten fish. He must not know. How are we going to tell him without embarrassing him? Herschel said, leave it to me. And so Herschel put down his knife and fork, and he leaned down and listened to the fish, and he spoke a few words and listened again. Herschel, what are you doing? I'm talking to the fish, he said to the rabbi. Oh, and what does the fish say? He says he came from the Pruth River. And now I told him he was an Ostropole. He said he's never heard of it. The rabbi said, well, Herschel, how are things in the Pruth River? And Herschel bent down and spoke a few words and listened. And he said, the fish said, how is he to know? It's been months since he's been there. The rabbi's face turned red and he tasted that fish. And it was terrible. And he ordered all of the fish taken away from the people. And he said, we will have a new dinner for you in a little while. And true to his word, they did. What was it? Potatoes.
In our next scene, Chocolate, a renowned detective attempts to solve the case of a rather coy wife who tries to hide her husband's disappearance. Listen for a rather delicious ending. It's performed by Mary Keating and Marty Cohen.
So, you have no idea where your husband is, Mrs. Keating?
No idea. Not a clue. He could be anywhere.
When was the last time you saw him, Mrs. Colby?
Well, let's see. This is Thursday. It must be 2 weeks now.
2 weeks?
Yes, it was right after the harvest moon. Because I remember saying to him, look, Clyde, it's the harvest moon. And he didn't answer. I was a little miffed at the time, but now I realize he wasn't even there. Which just goes to show you should never jump to conclusions.
Mr. Colby has been missing for 2 weeks, and you never reported this fact to the police?
Oh, heavens, no. My husband is a very private person. I wouldn't want the police intruding on his personal life. Would you like some coffee, Detective?
No, thank you. Mrs. Colby, you don't seem especially concerned about your husband's disappearance.
Well, of course I'm concerned, but I'm a worrier by nature, so I don't give that much weight.
I see.
Besides, this is hardly unusual for Clive. He's a whimsical fellow and possessed of strong idiosyncratic urges that often defy description. Once he walked out on us in the middle of Christmas dinner, then called us 3 days later from British Columbia. He was trying to join the Mounties. Well, we all had a good laugh about that, you can imagine.
Mrs. Colby, we have reason to suspect that the circumstances here are a little more serious than that.
Well, I should hope so.
Well, we've talked to your neighbors, and they reported that there was some kind of disturbance here the night your husband disappeared.
Really? Here? How funny.
They said there was a lot of shouting and arguing, profane language, strange animal noises.
Animal noises? That's so interesting. Would you like some apple juice, Detective?
No, thank you. Now, did you and your husband have any sort of disagreement that evening?
Oh, Lordy, no. My husband and I were always in perfect accord. Our evenings invariably spent in sedate, placid self-satisfaction.
There was no shouting.
Oh, the shouting. I can explain that. Clive is getting a little hard of hearing, and I may have raised my voice a tad, asking him what kind of topping he wanted on his ice cream frappe.
Well, a statement was overheard here by one of your neighbors, and I'm quoting now. Fat cow? I'll show you who's a fat cow.
Well, I can explain that. You see, we were playing a little game in the privacy of our bedroom, the details of which are rather salacious and not at all relevant to this investigation.
Well, perhaps not, but the words in question were spoken in the living room.
Well, we were moving around. It was spirited fun.
The neighbors reported screaming, lights going on and off, and some sort of violent struggle with the Venetian blinds.
Yes, that was Clive pretending to be a parrot.
A parrot.
Yes, we were playing the parrot and the cow, Detective.
I see.
So naturally, he was jumping around on the furniture, scratching the blinds, knocked over one of my best lamps. It was very comical and yet profoundly erotic.
Erotic? Profoundly erotic?
Would you like a muffin, Detective?
No, thank you. Mrs. Colby, we checked your credit purchases in the last couple of weeks, and we discovered a bill from Home Depot for a load of mixing cement, which was delivered to this address. 40 sacks of cement, to be precise.
40 sacks. Yes, that sounds about right.
On the face of it, that's a lot of cement, Mrs. Colby.
Well, I can explain that. You see, I make bird baths as a hobby.
Bird baths.
Yes, I design my own bird bath molds, mix the cement personally, pour it in, let it set, and voila!
I didn't notice any bird baths in the backyard.
Oh, no, I give them all away to friends and passersby. For me, the joy is in the creation.
What I did notice out behind the garage was a very large cement plot, about 3 feet by 6 feet, which appears to be quite freshly laid.
Well, that's all the excess cement. There are so many false starts in bird bath construction. You have no idea.
Apparently not.
Could I get you some sardines, Detective?
No, thank you. Mrs. Colby, I have observed that on the whole, you keep a very tidy house here.
Oh, why, thank you, Detective.
Which makes the stain on the carpet there all the more suspicious.
Oh, is there a stain?
Right there. It looks to me like dried blood.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
But I take it it's not?
Oh, my stars, no. It's chocolate.
Chocolate.
Yes, we had a box of Godiva chocolates sitting around here for the longest time. And then one day, oh, about 2 weeks ago, I just dipped into them and couldn't stop. I must have dropped a praline crunch on the floor. I was wondering what happened to it.
Excuse my presumption, ma'am, but that doesn't look like Godiva chocolate.
Oh, but it is. Look. See? Mm. See, it's still retaining its rich, decadent flavor. Would you like some?
No, thank you. But when I say it doesn't look like Godiva chocolate, I am referring to the fact that it more looks like, what shall I say, Nestle's?
I beg your pardon.
In the course of my investigations over the years, I have made a comparative study of the grades and qualities of foreign and domestic chocolate. This has a decidedly processed milk chocolate look, Mrs. Colby. How do you explain that? Or can you?
Well,
Ah, yes?
Oh, you caught me out, detective. I should have known better than to try to hoodwink a man of your acute discernment. Yes, it's a Kit Kat bar. My secret is out. I eat commercial candy store chocolate on the sly. Oh, if the girls at the country club knew this, I'm so embarrassed.
There, Mrs. Colby. Don't be so hard on yourself. Many a decent citizen will resort to lies and prevarications when social pressures come to bear. Needless to say, this will be our little secret and goes no farther than this room.
Oh, I'm very grateful, detective. You're a man of rare delicacy and perception.
Yes, I suppose I am. Well, I guess everything checks out here. Thank you for your time, ma'am. One more thing.
Yes?
This game you mentioned, the parrot and the cow. Does it have to be a parrot?
Why, no. The species are flexible, so long as the usual rules remain. You could be a snake, or a duck, or what you will.
I see. Well, we'll be in touch, Mrs. Colby.
And finally, we present an excerpt from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s last Sermon on Peace, given December 1967, and still timely and most relevant today. It's read by Jane Irola, Mary Keating, and Bob Rubinstein.
In 1963, on a sweltering August afternoon, I stood in Washington, D.C. and talked to the nation about many things. Toward the end of that afternoon, I talked to the nation about a dream that I had. Yet I must confess that not long after talking about that dream, I saw it turning into a nightmare. As a result, 1967 finds us a rather bewildered human race. We have neither peace within nor peace without. Everywhere, paralyzing fears harrow people by day and haunt them by night. Our world is sick with violence at home and around the world.
But in spite of that, I still have a dream. Because in life, you can't give up. If you lose hope, you lose that vitality that keeps life moving. You lose that courage to be, that quality that helps you go on in spite of all. And so today, I still have a dream that one day people will rise up and see that they are made to live together as brothers and sisters, that everyone will respect the dignity and worth of human personality, that the idle industries of Appalachia will be revitalized, the empty stomachs of Mississippi will be filled, and brotherhood will be more than a few words at the end of a prayer, but rather the first order of business on any legislative agenda.
That in all the state houses and city halls, people will be elected who will do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with their God. That one day war will come to an end, that nation will no longer rise up against nations, and they will study war no more. That with this faith, we will all adjourn the councils of despair and bring a new light into the dark chambers of pessimism. That one day justice will roll down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. That with this faith, we will be able to speed up the day when there is peace on earth and goodwill toward men. And on that glorious day, the morning stars will sing together, and the daughters and sons of the earth will shout for joy.
We hope you enjoyed this virtual Readers Theater Players production brought to you by the Very Little Theater of Eugene. Like other theaters, the VLT is dark this season with no ticket sales due to the virus. So we hope you'll seriously consider a donation at thevlt.com as we seek to reach our 100-year anniversary in 2029. Thank you, and thanks for joining us today.